Hey guys, welcome to this video. So in this video, we're going to be using Django to build a very basic to-do list app. So right here, you can see that I have 3 lists already, which are Eat the Gym, Start Your Project, and Go for a Run. So right here, I can just add a new list like Go for Lunch. And then once I hit add, you'll see that that is going to be added right here. So once I have added this, I can also come and then let's say delete it from the list, and then it's not going to be there again. Let's delete this one also, and then you see that it's not there again, it's deleted. So it's a very basic app which just shows you how to add some data to your database and then be able to access that data and then also delete that data. So when we are done with building this project, we're also going to host it online. We're going to deploy it to the web using Heroku. So this tutorial is going to be in 2 parts. The first part, which is this video, is where we're going to be building this project, and the second part is where we're going to be deploying the project. So as you can see, this URL right here is not our local host. It is the end product of what we built, which is the URL to the hosted project. So without further ado, let's dive straight into this video. The first thing we need to do, as always, is to make sure that we have Django installed. So we should do pip install Django. So since I have Django installed already, it's going to tell me requirement already satisfied. But for you, you should go ahead and install Django on your computer. So it's going to tell me here, as you can see, it says requirement already satisfied. That is to show that I have Django. So now that we have Django installed, let's just go ahead and create our project. So I'm just going to say Django -admin start project, and let's name it to-do list. Now once we press enter, it's going to automatically create a Django boilerplate, which is a folder which contains all the necessary files to start a Django project. So let's go into that folder which is called to-do list. Now if I press dir, I'm going to see manage.py and another folder called to-do list. Another thing I need to do now is to create a Django app, and I'm going to call this app to do. So I can just do Django admin start app, and I can name it to do. So once I click on enter, as you can see right now we have only 1 file and 1 folder. But now once I check it again, you see I have 2 folders and 1 file, and the second folder which was created is this to do, which is our app. So now that we have everything set up, let's open up our project in Visual Studio Code. So this is Visual Studio Code here. All I just need to do is to press open folder and then open up my project in the directory which I created it in. So I created my own in to-do list directory right here. I'm just going to select the folder and it's automatically going to open on Visual Studio Code. So once it has opened, now we're just going to quit this. We just need to configure some things which are our template file. That means the HTML file which we are going to use, and then we'll get straight into the tutorial. So to do this, we're going to make sure we're in the root directory, and then we're going to create a new folder. We're going to call that folder templates with an S, templates. And in that templates folder, I'm going to move in the HTML which I'm going to use for this project. As I said, I'm going to link the description to everything that we are doing in this video. So all the link to the source code is going to be in the description below. So you can check that out to get all the HTML, CSS and everything we are using in this project. So I have it right here. I'm just going to drag it into Visual Studio Code, and then what I need to do is to paste it in templates. Now that I have this here, I'm just going to press cancel. So what I need to do now for Django to see this, I'm going to come into my to-do list, go into settings, and once I'm in settings, I'm going to scroll down a little bit. I'm going to look for where I see templates. So I'm going to scroll down. As you guys can see, there is template here. So where you see theirs, you are just going to write base there, then you're going to put a slash, then inside there you're going to put templates. This is simply telling Django where all your template files are located. So after doing that, we can cancel settings. Now the next thing we need to do is to come into our to-do app, create a new file called urls.py, and in here we're just going to import path. So say from django.urls import path. So what we want to do now, since we are done with configuring the template file and Django knows where our template is, we just want to route our URL. Simply means we want to provide where our URL should go to when a user comes to our website. So you are going to understand that in a second. So let's go to say URL patterns equals to path, and we're going to leave it blank. Blank means that's the home page. And we're going to say views.index, and then let's give it a name of index. So for us to use views, we have to import views. So say from the root import views. So now that we are importing views, we also need to go to views, create a new function called index. It must take a request, and then we need to render that HTML page, which is index.html. So I'm going to say return, okay, right here we're going to say return render request index.html. Now this is going to render that index page. So let me just cancel this. So once I come into urls.py, as you can see, we are telling it that once the user comes to our home, it should take the user to the views.index, and once the user comes to that function, it's just rendering the index.html page. But if we run our project now, it's still going to show us the default Django template. That's simply because we only configured our URLs in our app, we didn't configure it in our project. So if you open your to-do list project, that's the main project folder, you're going to see a urls.py file also. So for us to configure it here, we need to import one thing called include, and then we're going to create another path which is also blank, still means home, and we're just going to say include to-do.urls. Now once we save this, everything is fine. Let's just go ahead and open a new terminal. So right here in the new terminal, we're going to run our project and test it in our browser. So let's just give it a few seconds. Okay, so now let's run our project by saying python manage.py run server. So once this runs on our server, on our local host, we're going to go open our browser and we're going to see this index.html page. So what we just need to do is to copy this localhost, come into our browser and paste it right here. So now we should see, as you guys can see, we see this beautiful Django to-do list app template. So now that we have everything configured on the front end, on the UI, what we just need to do is to start with the backend. So what we want to do now is to create a Django model for the to-do where everything is going to be saved, and then once a user inputs something right here and clicks on add, we're going to submit it to that Django model, and we're just going to show all the objects which are in that model. And then another feature is that once the user clicks on delete, it should just delete that object from the model. It's pretty easy. So let's dive straight into it. So we're going to come right here. We can just close this terminal, and then what we want to do is to open our models.py file. Now we're going to create a new model, and let's just call it to do. So we're going to say models.model, and then we only want this to just take one field. So we're going to call this title. I'm going to say models.character field. I'm going to give it a max length. Let's say max length of 1000, and this should be fine. So now what this simply means is that our model is taking only one field, and this field is the title. So if I come into this template, as you can see, this says it's the gym, meet George. All these are the titles of the to-do. So that's what that field is. So all these are just dummy data for now. They are just static data, but when we integrate our database with it, they are going to be dynamic. So let's come back into our Visual Studio Code, and after doing this, let's just return underscore str self. So we want to return that title. So return, we're going to say self dot title. So we can save this. Now if you know Django very well, you should know that once you make any slight change to your models file, you need to make migrations and then migrate into your database. But before you do that, you must make sure that the app in which you are configuring your models.py must be registered in your settings file. So if we come into our settings right here, we're going to go up and look for installed apps. Right here in installed apps, before we migrate our data to our database, we need to add our app, which is called to do, into our installed apps. So doing this alone, we've added the app. We're just going to save it. So you must make sure that this to do correlates with the name of your app. After saving it, we can cancel that. So now we're just going to bring back our terminal. So instead of cutting this server, let's just open a new terminal. So what we want to do is to make migrations and migrate. So say Python manage.py make migrations, enter, and then once this make the migrations, and then we're just going to say Python manage.py migrate. Now this is going to migrate everything we have into our database. As you can see, it's making all those migrations, which is good. So now that that is done, let's close the terminal. Another thing I like to do is to create a super user and configure my Django admin so I can see all the database easily. So let's bring back our terminal and do that. What we just need to do is to say Python manage.py create super user. Now this is going to prompt us to put in some details, just like if we're registering on a site. So we can just say admin. Let's just give it admin and password. So bypass that. Now that we have this done, let's go ahead and test it. So let's come to our project and go to /admin. So in /admin, it should tell us to log in. So we're going to log in with those details. So admin and also the password, and just click on login. So now we should automatically log us in into Django admin. So right now you can see that we're logged in this Django admin. So the only thing we can see in the database is the user and groups. We also want to register our model which we just created, which is the to-do model. So for us to do this, is very easy. We're just going to come in here. We can quit this now. We're going to come into our admin.py file, import our to-do model. So we're going to say from .models import to do, and then let's just register it in our admin. So say admin.site.register, and then let's register the to do. It's that easy. Now once we save it, all we just need to do is to come back and hit refresh. Now as you can see, to do is already added in our data. So once we click on it, we're going to see the list of to-do in which we have here. So let's say a user comes into, let me just quickly go back right here. What we want to do now is that once a user inputs something right here and clicks on add, it should automatically be saved in this database. So let's go ahead and do that. Now for us to do that, we're going to come back here. Let's come into our views.py, which has our index function. So what I want to do is to go to our index.html. We're just going to scroll down into where we have what we're looking for is this form, this input right here. So we're going to scroll down where we have that. So as you can see, we have that right up here. So it is an input. What we just want to do is to make it a form. So I'm just going to say form Now we're gonna close it. Let me first cut that and see where to close it. So we're gonna close it right after the span tag, which is add. So just gonna close it right here. And then what we want to do now is to just give this, I think, some indentation. So let's just give it a little bit of indentation. So that's nice. So since this is in a form now, so guys, what I put in a form is this input right here, this input, and then this add as our submit button. So let's just go back here. So what we want to do, let's make this a submit button. So say type equals to submit. It needs to have this, so say submit. Now we can save this. We must make sure that this have a name, which is this one right here. So say name equals to, let's say, title. So let's save this. So what we want to do now is to just make sure that once the user clicks on add, which is serving as our submit button, it should send those data to our index function. So let's do that. So say action, let's leave it blank so it sends it back here. And let's say method, let's give it a post method, we don't need a get method. And then you know that every time we're using a post method, we must always add our csrf token, csrf underscore token. So if I save this right now, click on refresh, once I type in something and then click on add, okay, as you can see, when I click on that, nothing is happening. So I think there's a JavaScript right here, this on click. So this JavaScript is colliding with it. Let's save it and try it again. Let's input something and I click on add. Okay, so it's not serving as the button. So what we just need to do, instead of using, okay, let's put this back, instead of using a span, we can just change it to a button. So right here also, let's change this to a button. Nice. Now let's go back and then refresh. As you guys can see, it made a little bit of change, but that's okay. So let's just input something and then click on add. So you guys can see that it refreshed that page. So what I want to do, once it refresh that page, it should add whatever the user inputs to the list of to do right here. Let's go ahead and do that. So we're just going to come into our views.py. So right here in our function, we're going to use an if statement. And that if statement we want to do is to get if it's a post request. So we're just going to say if, let's give it a space. So say if request the method is equals to post. So if it's equals to post, what we just want to do is to say new underscore to do should be equals to. So before I continue, we need to import the to do model in which we want to save. So we're going to say from dot models import to do. So now that we have this model, we can automatically save a data into that model. So I'm just going to say to do, going to open a bracket, and then let's say title should be equals to request dot post, which is title. So guys, what I did here is I assigned a new variable, and what I put inside that variable was this to do model, but I'm passing in some fields, a field actually. So this title is basically this title we have in our model. So this title is this title right here. So what we're giving that field is request.post title. So we're just getting this title from a post. If we come into our index.html, we can see that once the user clicks on add, it's posting this input which is named title back into this page. So also, while in this place, we're going to collect using that post, collecting that title. This title is whatever the user input, and then saving it into this variable. So once we do that, and then we just come down and click on, and type new to do dot save, it's automatically going to save it in our database. So after it's saved, let's just return. Let's redirect the user back to this page. Before we can redirect, we need to import redirect. So let's import that. So we're going to say return redirect the user back to the home page. Now that's very easy. So now let's refresh again. No, let's cancel this and hit this. So let's say code. So now once I click on add, you see that it refreshed and brought me back to this page, but nothing show here because we're not getting the list of data for now. But if we come into our to-do database and click on refresh, you should see that we have one new data now, which is code, which I input. So that's basically how to do it. Let me go back now. Let me come here, do another thing and say go for a run. So now once I click on enter, come back here and refresh, you see that now we have a new data called go for a run. So what we want to do now is that all this data which we have, that's what we want to show here. We don't want all these static data. Also very easy. We're going to come back into our Visual Studio Code. So right here in our index also, what we just need to do is to get this to do model. So we're going to say to do equals to do dot objects dot all, and then once we have this, we're just going to pass to do right here into our index.html. So we'll say to do should be to do. Now once we save this, right here in our index.html, we're going to come down here and use a for loop. So what we need to do now, we can remove all of these. Once we remove all of these, we just need to use a for loop and say for to do. Okay, right here in our views.py, let's name this to do's. So we can say for to do in to do's. So for to do in to do's, then let's end our for loop right here. So let's end for and for, and then right here we're just gonna say to do dot title. We can save this, come back here and refresh. Now as you can see, it gives us everything in which we have right here. So go for a run code go for a run, but it's reversed. So if I click on something here now, say it's the gym and save it, you can see it's automatically added on the list, but it's on the bottom. So we want the newer to-dos to be on top. For us to do this, we're just gonna come here and say for to do in to-dos reversed. When we save this and come here, you see that it's the latest that is on top. So let's just do something like eat. Now you can see it is on the top. Let's say sleep. Now you can see sleep is on the top. So that's basically how to showcase a list in Django Ginger formats just using the reverse attribute. Very easy. So now that we have this, let me just add one more attribute, which is, as you can see that this everything is in small letter. So we want that even if a user writes it in, let me say, small letter, like buy or clothes. So as you can see, the user started this with the B as a small letter. So once it's showing here, we want it to be cap letter. For us to do this, we're just going to come here, use this and say title. This alone, once we refresh, as you can see, everything now is in caps letter. So that's also a good attribute which might be useful in some of your projects. So now that's good. What we just need to do now, which I think is the last thing, is that once the user comes here and clicks on delete, we want whatever is here to be deleted. Also very easy. We're going to come back here. So we're going to create a new URL. and then let's name this URL delete. So we're going to say path, let's name it delete, but this URL right here is going to be a dynamic URL, and this is because it's taking an input. So when we want to delete a to-do, that to-do is going to have an ID which is being sent to this delete URL. So for this URL to collect that ID, we need to use a dynamic URL. So we need to pass in a variable. We're going to say slash, let's give it a string, and let's say pk, like this. So after doing this, we can continue with our normal format, which is views.delete, and then we can say name equals to delete. So this is nice. Now we can come into our views and create a new function and name it delete. Take a request, and after taking a request, it should take pk, and pk is the variable which we assigned here, that is a string. So we're not rendering any HTML page. What we want to do is to just get a particular object from the model. So for us to do this, we're just going to say to do should now be equals to do dot objects dot get the one in which the ID is equals to pk. So now once we get that, we just want to say to do dot delete, and then once it has deleted it, then we want to redirect the user back to the home page. So what we're doing here now, you guys are going to see how we're going to send the ID into this view. So let me explain in detail. When you create an object in a model in Django, automatically each object has an ID. So this code, which is the first object I created, has an ID of 0. This go for a run has an ID of 1. Eat the gym has an ID of 2, and so on like that. So each of them has a unique ID which is being assigned to them. So that unique ID, once I click on delete, that unique ID is going to be used to know which to do the user wants to delete. So once I click on delete, that ID is going to be sent into this URL, and then it's going to be saved into pk, which is this variable. Then we're going to collect that variable named pk into this view. Then what we're doing right here is that we're saying to do dot object dot get. So this to do is our model in our database, and then we're saying dot get the one in which the ID is equals to pk, and as you know, pk is the ID in which we sent into this view. So we're basically getting the ID which the user wants to delete, and then we're storing that particular object into a variable called to do. So once we already know what the user wants to delete, we just use the attribute to do.delete. It deletes it, and then we return the user back to the home page. So now let's go back and see. Now let's refresh this. So let's click on delete. Nothing happens. This is because we've not yet assigned the variable. Let me show you how to do this. I'm just going to come here, right here in our index where we see delete. So this delete now has to be a link. So I'm just going to give it a link A, and then let's paste delete in there. Then let's say hyperlink. So we're going to use the Django format, and then we're going to say delete, and then want to say to do dot id. So once we save this, everything should work. So let's come back here, refresh. Okay, it says invalid right here. So the reason why it's invalid is because it says delete expected empty or n4. Did you forget to load this tag? So what we just need to do is to come here. If I shift to this side, you guys can see that the error is coming from right here. So the problem is the way in which we pass this URL. So we can also pass this URL by saying delete slash, we'll say todo.id. Once we save it and go back, let's make sure we have everything correct. Now once we refresh, we shouldn't be seeing this error. Now you can see that this delete is showing as a link. We'll take care of that later, but now let's click on delete and see what happens. As you guys can see, that particular to do is gone. Let's click on the next one. That is gone. Click on this, is gone. And then let's also try to add jog. As you can see, it's there. Once I click on delete, it's gone. So that's basically how to build a basic to-do list app. So now let's just take care of this blue link which is showing there. For us to do this, we're just going to use a basic CSS. We're going to say style equals to text decoration. So say text decoration should be none. So this CSS is going to remove all the text decoration which is assigned to a link. So once we refresh, you guys can see that it doesn't have that line under it again, but the color is still blue. So also very easy, we're just gonna come here and say color. Okay, let's shift back. Right in the style, we're gonna say color should be black. Let's save this, refresh. Now you can see that the color is black, and once we hit on delete, everything still works successfully. Delete again, still works successfully. Now let's just test run our app once again. So now we can add a new to do. Let's say it's the gym. It enters. Oh, we've added that before. So let's just delete that, and let's just say learn flask. So click on enter. As you can see, it brings up this learn flask, and it brings it up the latest side of the table of the lists, and we can also delete. And one feature which we added, if we put in small letter, it's automatically going to show it in cap letter. So I hope you guys learned something from this tutorial section. If you did, please don't forget to smash the like button and please subscribe.